Hello, here we are, AstroPath. That is Jenny of Hidden Path Astrology and myself, Laurie of Astro Lore. And we are here today to talk about Jupiter's ingress into Aries, which happens on May 10th. Before we dive into that conversation, I just want to say, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel, share this video with anyone you know that might like it. Click the like button, leave us a message, anything. Just reach out and help us get the algorithm so people will actually watch our videos. So on to the topic at hand. What is Jupiter about, Jenny? Let's start there.
Jupiter is, well, it's the biggest planet in our solar system. So it kind of derives some meaning from that. It's big and exuberant and enthusiastic and positive, and it basically just makes everything bigger. Wherever we see Jupiter, yeah, Lori's doing a song and dance for Jupiter. But wherever Jupiter comes in, it's the symbolism is that it's going to expand whatever it is that is in that area of your life. In olden times, like Jupiter is always the great benefic, and it is the great benefic, but you also have to bear in mind that not everything is better when it's bigger. And so there are ways in which Jupiter can expand things that are maybe not exactly what we had in mind, or, so you don't always want to just assume it's going to be this great thing. It impacts, I mean, it depends on what's going on in your chart and what's happening. But obviously, if you're losing big, you don't want to keep losing big, right? So just to think more positively and think in terms of like it can also bring, good expansion as well, of course. Right. So Jupiter has been happily bathing away in Pisces. Jupiter loves Pisces. It's one of the rulers of Pisces, or really is the ancient ruler. And so it's been in that spot for a while, probably just about a year. That's usually what it does. And moving into Aries is a dramatically different thing. But before we go into that, what do you want to add to the Jupiter picture?
Well, the one thing I want to add to the Jupiter conversation is that I really like it that you brought up its rulership of Pisces. Jupiter, the ancient ruler, is Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces in the ancient system. In the modern system, it's the ruler of Sagittarius. So, whenever something important is going on with Jupiter, it's going to impact the areas of your chart that hold both Pisces and Sagittarius as well. Jupiter is a 12-year cycle. So wherever it is right now, that's where it was 12 years ago. So that's one thing to keep in mind as we're looking at this. As Jupiter is moving into Aries, what was going on 12 years ago when Jupiter was also moving into Aries? That's always an important thing. So Jupiter spends approximately a year in each sign. Because of the retrograde, it's not, a solid year, because it'll move into one sign, then move back out and move back in. But yeah, that's the path, is a 12-year cycle. Yeah. So I think that's all I want to say about Jupiter. I'm really glad you brought up, sometimes expansion is over expansion. And you always want to pay attention to that. Yes, it's the great benefic. It brings great gifts, but sometimes those gifts we might not be prepared for them as well.
And sometimes I like to think a little bit of Jupiter as almost like grace, where you're trying to open up and receive the beneficial things. And we're not always in the best space for that. So that's sometimes what it reflects. But it really is like opening to the gifts of Jupiter is what we're aiming to do. But it's interesting having it go into Aries. Are we ready to talk about that?
Yes, I think absolutely. Let's talk about Aries. Okay. And first of all, when it goes into Aries, it is on what we call the Aries point, which is a very public, very kind of dramatic statement of something that is widely seen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think some other things to think about, we mentioned briefly that Jupiter is a ruler of Pisces. So now it's going into Aries, which is a Mars ruled sign. So we're in a very different territory. Aries is I think my favorite keyword is ignition. It's when it's the kindling, it's the bright spark that lights the fire right up. And it's usually really hot. It's burning quick. It doesn't have time to stop and think. It's just moving. Its job is to get things started. Its job is to launch the rocket out of orbit. So it's not, hopefully you've already done the thinking and the reflecting, and actually with Pisces, the dreaming, the imagining of what you want to aim this really hot and furious energy at. And that because it's so quick moving. So that you can probably already think to yourself, like, what are some of the positive and negatives of that? I mean, it's great. We all need that startup energy. There's nothing like a Aries focus that's going to get something done and get it off the ground. But at the same time, it's not in it for the marathon. Aries is very much about the sprint. And so you have to kind of think about that. And so having Jupiter move into Aries is just where it's bringing a lot of warmth into an area of life, a lot of velocity, a lot of opening. It's like a huge oxygenation of a big fire that's just like burning more furiously with Jupiter. So we want to just think about that kind of energy coming into an area of our lives.
Yeah, I love that. The key word ignition, like you said, is really important. And I think about all of the fire signs as being, they're so instinctual. It's not like you said, you don't think about, with a strong Aries energy, there isn't a lot of thought. It's just action. I think of the word gusto and, confidence. You just move forward. So that's really, that's Aries. Aries is the ignition of fire.
Yeah. Yeah, so what you want to be thinking about when you're thinking about where's Jupiter going is this big beneficial planet coming to this area of your life that is about really starting something new. So there's a tremendous influx of energy that's coming into wherever this is opening up for you in your particular chart, whichever house this is landing in. But before we get to that, we wanted to talk a little bit about the back and forth that's happening here, like the movement from Pisces to Aries, and what's already been going on in Aries, like what ground is kind of being prepared in Aries. So we want to talk a little bit about that before we launch into what it's like for each person.
So what I'd like to bring in on that is first, Jupiter has been really in this happy place of Pisces with Neptune. Venus was there, Mars was, it's been going through this area, kind of developing this sizable dream. That's how I keep thinking about it, especially with both Neptune and Jupiter in there. They both rule that sign. They are co-rulers of Pisces. So it's been kind of a sweet spot, although when Mars moved in, it kind of got a little messy. But basically, there's been the development over this past year of some big expansive idea of a dream. And so it's moving. It's like, to me, I think of it as taking what it has been dreaming about, what it has been expanding on the dream level, and bringing it into a place where it's ready to take action on that dream. And what has been going on in Aries that I think is also significant is that Chiron has been in that area. And Chiron, we don't always talk about Chiron, because it's not a planet, it's an asteroid. But as the asteroids go, Chiron is very significant. And we think of Chiron as the wounded healer. I feel like Chiron has been really preparing Aries, kind of doing the healing work necessary in order for Aries to take action. What do you want to add to that?
Well, I could go on a long tangent and I won't.
You could.
I mean, Chiron's a lovely asteroid to think about. In astronomy, Chiron knits the inner and outer planets together because its orbit's elliptical, and so it goes all the way out past Saturn, and it comes all the way in towards Mars. So it kind of knits together that big gap between the planets. So it can be said to be the place where you take your personal stuff and you do your healing in order to impact the larger community, that it kind of, it broadens your story, that whatever your story is, where you need to be healed around the way that you take action and the way that you are autonomous, the way you engage the kind of warrior energy, is like you have a role, you know, to play. So whatever your personal story is, it folds into the broader tapestry of the world we're all living in now. So it really has this elegant way of linking it in. And the way it does it is, it's like you have to do your healing work so that you can share the fruits of your labor, and you end up helping people who have similar issues to you. Like there's stories that gravitate towards you because of that work you're doing. So it's a pretty cool, there's a ton of mythology you could read about it. It's really interesting.
That's beautiful, the way you described that. Thank you, Jenny. I like that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I love Chiron nerd. And I love what you're saying here about just this idea that Chiron's been there and now Jupiter's moving in after having this long spa day in Pisces and really having this time to work with the much less tangible parts of our life. And now it's time to take action. And that's kind of the simple version. Maybe we got a little sneak preview of this back on April 1st when we had the new moon in Aries. We had the sun and the moon and Mercury together in Aries, and it kind of kicked off Aries season. But really the main focus has been in the Pisces dimension for a while. So with Jupiter moving into Aries, we're really seeing some new energy coming in. So a
new storyline.
Yeah, for
sure. Okay. Are we ready to move into the individual pieces?
Yeah. Do you want to, I didn't know if you wanted to show the chart of the actual day, or should we just move into let's just
move right in there. Okay. I think that's okay. In these visuals that I'm opening, you will see that I wanted to keep things simple so we can see exactly what it is we're looking at. So I've only included those 3 planets we talked about: Jupiter, Neptune, and Chiron. Right. So here is, if you have Aries rising, this Jupiter, when it moves into Aries, is just coming right into your first house. It has been busy developing this this dream within your unconscious. There's been something very quietly working out some of your internal storylines. And now it's ready to take action on it in the realm of your actual personality.
Yeah. I wonder too, if those of you with Aries rising, like that 12th house Pisces space might be there might be some suffering or some difficulties that have been part of that. I mean, it depends on what's going on in your life, but this Jupiter moving into Aries may come as a big relief to you, because you've kind of been in that difficult space. And this really represents, the energy moving forwards. What is different though is you don't get to escape the healing zone of having to go through that suffering, the development of compassion and all those things. With Chiron in the first house, you're not escaping that story, but you're moving into a new layer of it that probably feels a little better to those of you with Aries rising, because you want action. That's usually what tends to be lit up with that. So yeah.
Okay, so it is time to take action on your personality. How do you want to show up in the world? What work have you been doing while Chiron's been moving in through here, which has been approximately 3 years, while Chiron's been moving through this house? What have you been healing about your personality, about how you express yourself, and how are you ready now to take action on who you are and who you really want to show up to be as an individual?
Yeah, right? This is I think that's absolutely right. Spot on. I think that it's about self-awareness a lot. See, what have you becoming aware of in this time frame? So,
okay, ready to move on. Taurus rising. If you have Taurus rising, Jupiter is moving into your 12th house. So it's really bringing that expansive energy of taking action into your unconscious. What is it within your unconscious that maybe you've been ignoring, even though there's been healing work going on there, but still it's time to take action on that? what does that mean to you if you have Taurus rising? You know, the dream has been being built up in this area of community. You've been sort of probably working on developing and expanding a community to support you. And now that you have that support, you've built that support is there to support you as you do you really take on the courage of doing this inner work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting when you have Taurus rising and you have this in the 12th house, because it means that you're having to do the inner work of squaring your individual, who you are, with the collective. I mean, it's a huge leap to kind of understand your role in that much, much, much larger piece. I think a little bit, I couldn't help it when you're talking, the image that comes to my mind is like, it's almost like you have to, with Aries, is that you have to like open the hood of the car and you're going to have to futz with the engine, because that's where the Aries is. It's under the hood though. You're going to have to look under the hood.
Right.
So that's where you're going to have to be like, you know, do these two wires need to join, or where do I need to get a spark?
Right. And with it being Aries, like being courageous enough to try it.
Yeah.
It might be scary to put those two wires together. You might get a shock, but Aries is all about having the courage to take the action.
Yeah, and it's in for the betterment of humanity that you be willing to do this work and kind of engage with those less tangible things. And you know, this could be a time to go on a retreat and kind of dig in, but make sure it's solo. It's going to be an autonomous thing. This is where you need to kind of wrestle with your inner fire. So
yeah, you can't pass it off onto somebody else.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to go to Gemini Rising. And with Gemini Rising, this Jupiter moving into Aries is going to enter your 11th house. So it's really about expanding your courage in community. So, you know, you can think about that if we go back to the dream that's been being developed in the 10th house, a dream being developed in terms of your career, your vocation, how you show up on that level. And now it's like taking action on expanding your career into community.
Yeah, that's great.
Where you've been doing a lot of healing work for the last few years.
Nice, Lori. Yeah, that's interesting. I was thinking, you know, what is it that you're doing in the career that's actually, I mean, your career is about your social reputation, but when you take it into the 11th house, it's having a ripple effect beyond just your profession, beyond just, you know, the paycheck you make from that profession. Like it takes it to a bigger place. So it's kind of like, what have you been developing in your career that now you need to go ahead and step up and be the leader in your community? Keep thinking of the 11th house. There's something about leadership. There's something about serving your community with your ability to lead.
Yeah.
Well, it's potent. Yeah.
That's pretty simple, really. Okay. So now let's move to Cancer Rising. And this brings that Jupiter into the 10th house. So again, we can think of it as the dream that's been being developed in the 9th house, your worldview. Where have you been really expanding your understanding of the world in a bigger way? You can think of that 9th house as travel or higher education. You know, maybe this is about you've been developing an understanding of something, of some bigger picture. And now it's time to bring that understanding to your career. It's going to take some courage. You've been working for the last couple of years on healing some issues there in your 10th house of your career. And now it's time to be courageous and take action on it.
Yeah. It's very likely that those issues in your career are about you finding the courage to step up in some way, to step up and be bold in your career. It's a place that maybe in the past you've felt sort of shrinking back and, I'm not sure if it's going to be me, or I don't know if I can do this. And that maybe that's some of the energy. And then with Jupiter moving here, it's just, now's the time. And to have trust that you've done that work in the 9th house, you've done that Pisces work in the 9th house to really build trust, to open your mind and let yourself kind of extend beyond what was known before, and have that idealistic vision, dream, and then let that support you as you now move into this career space and apply those things into that. You're not going to forget about them. You're applying that healing work to it.
And now you've got the gusto and the courage to take the action. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I think this is a really lovely little way to look at this. I really appreciate this. Okay, so with Leo rising, the Jupiter's moving into your 10th house. So you have been developing the dream in this area of where you grapple with, how you grapple with other people's values. How do you, I'm going to let you talk about this a little bit.
I'm kicking it over here.
I'm going to kick it over to you.
Well, there's something about the 8th house here where with Pisces that you're developing or have been developing deep compassion for the struggles that other people have, and not feeling like you have to, I mean, you're getting involved, you're getting somewhat personally involved, but you're also able to kind of have a view about it and recognize that we all have a commonality here, but at the same time, you're able to set some boundaries. And that's kind of what you're working with Leo rising, that you're really tangling with that difficult Pisces stuff in the 8th house. And that's going to enable you really to take action on your viewpoint and move forwards into the world and expand your mind, take on other viewpoints, and really heal whatever it might be that's held you back from having an open mind.
Right. Huh. Yeah, that's great. And, you know, and it could be around, you know, depending on you, your life, where you are in your life, this could be a time where, you know, you've kind of really been struggling with other people's stuff. And now it's time to step up and have the courage to go back to school, to take that trip to Europe or whatever, you know, something that's going to really expand your view in a big way. And that area, you know, maybe for some time you've been really having to do some healing work on feeling whatever competent in those areas of expansion.
Yeah. And for some reason, when you're talking to, I just keep having this view of like traveling to foreign lands, being in a totally different place and having the courage to just say, you know what, I've done the inner work. I'm here to learn. I'm here to do this, and I've got this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what courage is.
I've got the courage. I love that. You know, to me, the word courage with Aries is so important because you really, it's one of the most positive things I think about Aries is just that development of courage. It's one of the most important things that Aries needs to develop is courage.
Yeah.
Okay. So with Virgo rising, Jupiter's just moved into that 8th house. So the dream, the compassion, all that has been expanding and developing in your personal partnerships. There's been, a lot of dreamy energy going on there. And now it's time to take action on what you have learned to understand, the compassion you've developed in your personal relationships. It's time to take action on your I know I lost the word. Maybe because this one's mine and it's a little too close to home. But it's like taking action on how you're going to really truly grapple with those deeper levels of relationship. Not just that dream, but there's also the reality of the shared resources. Those deeper levels as well, where you've been doing a lot of healing work for the past 3 years.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff.
Developing the boundaries.
One thing that's really useful is to think about the 7th and the 8th house together and how they work together, and just not forgetting that we're talking about the wheel of the houses. So there's an unfolding, it describes an unfolding process. And the unfolding process here is what, Lori, exactly what you're saying, like the deepening of that partnership to now we're going underneath the surface a little bit and we're getting more into, hey, how do you want to run our finances together? Or maybe it's like time to live together, and you're encountering these things beneath the surface that previously are like, yeah, I don't have to deal with that yet, and now it's time. So
it's
but
like,
again, it's that faith, you've developed it, right?
right.
Like
And now what it takes is the courage to face it and move forward with it. Yeah, there you have it. Okay. Yep. Next one is Libra rising, and this puts Jupiter just into the 7th house from where it's been in the 6th. So, you've been happily moving through the 6th house, developing a connection with your routines, your healthcare, your pets, connecting, expanding that area. And now you're taking action into the 7th house on relationship, facing the reality and taking on the courage of being in an intimate partner. I'm losing something there, Jenny. You got to fill me in.
Well, I always think that it's interesting with Libra rising, because that's always such a copacetic personality, like, let's work together. And, yet Aries is ruling the 7th house. So there's always a lesson for folks of Libra rising around being autonomous in your relationship, or maybe it's that person who attracts like kind of fierce partners, and they have to learn to stand up for themselves. That's another manifestation that sometimes happens. But anyway, it's about that lesson of that classic self and other, like the mirror that other people present to you in all your relationships. And it's a classic human, like a fundamental struggle of like, how do I do me yet be in relationship with you? And anybody Libra rising, this is really pronounced.
Yeah.
And all of that Pisces that you had going on was about you doing all the things you needed to do to keep yourself healthy. To feed your soul, because of Pisces, that has to happen there too. So those are the things that you were doing before. You've done all that, and now you're ready to engage on this new level. So yeah.
That's an interesting one. That 6th house to 7th is always interesting. One of the ways, I don't know how this relates, but as we were talking about the connection between the 7th and the 8th on the last one, I always think of the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th as it's the relationship. This is where you fall in love and play a lot and have great fun sex. And then things move into the 6th house where you have to get used to living together, just the day-to-day routines of being together. And then all of a sudden the shock of actually relationship. And then the deeper level. So, there's an idea there of, maybe you've been just letting the relationship be as you've been healing some stuff there with Chiron going through that place for the last couple of years. And you've been really focusing on just developing your own inner sense of compassion toward yourself, toward your health, toward your body. And now it's time to, really face some of the reality and take that on, the courage to actually be in that relationship.
Yeah. Nice. I like how you pulled those 4 houses together, Lori. That's great. So
yeah, I always think about those 4 are really connected in relationship. Okay, so now let's go to Scorpio rising, and this puts us where the development of compassion or the development of the dream, however you want to look at that, this last period of time where there's been so much Pisces has been in that 5th house of our creativity, or where we give love very unconditionally, especially with Pisces there. And now it's time to take action in regards to your day-to-day routines, your health. Maybe it's time to go get a new kitten.
I think you're projecting.
I'm obsessed with getting a new kitten right now.
Well, I was thinking here with Scorpio rising and having just that deep Pisces in the 5th house. And the 5th house, I think the appropriate way to think of it here is one of your favorites, Lori, the giving of unconditional love, that the 5th house can symbolize, like how you give love. And with all of that Pisces that's been going on for at least the past month, you've just had a real big opportunity to kind of steep yourself. And what does that mean, and to dissolve any blocks that have been in this area. And so now you get to incorporate all of that education about the giving of unconditional love into your daily routines and carrying that with you and making, so that kind of says to me, it reminds me of like, I think it's Thich Nhat Hanh's work, where it's like, when you're doing the dishes, do the dishes fully present, you know, with love. I mean, it's that kind of thing that makes me think of making that jump from the fifth house to the sixth house in with Pisces to Aries. And that was my
another thing that comes to my mind in thinking, you know, if you focus on the creativity also of the fifth house, you can think of, you know, this could very well symbolize someone who has been really steeped in, with Neptune and Jupiter in there, really steeped in learning a craft and developing some real creative work. And now it's time to bring it to market, or, you know, make it a daily part of your routine to be creating this. Being courageous enough to bring it out of that internal and more into a day-to-day factor in your life.
I was laughing. It's like, it could also be that you just had a baby and now you're dealing with the realities of the crying baby who's home with you now. And you're like, oh my God, how do I work? How do I have a baby? How do I change the diaper? How do I, you know, it's,
that's so funny.
Switch.
I love to think about that. I think about someone, you know, hugely pregnant and they're just in this blissed out state. Oh, I'm going to have this sweet baby. And then the baby starts crying. Anyway.
That's good. I like it.
Okay.
That's so Scorpio Rising.
Right. Okay. So now let's move to Sagittarius Rising. And this brings Jupiter into the fifth house. I'm going to let you take it.
All right. Well, let's see. So you've been doing Pisces in the fourth house. Let's start with that.
Right.
So the fourth house is home and family and also your lineage. And it can be your physical house that's your home, but also the people in your life that make up your home, or even your chosen family here. So you've had like some really nice energy flowing in this area of life where you're kind of, I don't know, sort of steeping that area of life in some way of working with your family in a more blissful sense, hopefully. And then with Jupiter moving into that fifth house, like, well, maybe now you can branch out a little bit and have a little more fun with it, bring more of that playful, like kind of risk-taking type of energy and generosity. It's another key word for the fifth house. So it's taking action on that, bringing that sweet, blissful, dreamy space that you've had for a while now in the home life and taking it out on the playground, you know, like go to the amusement park or
we could talk about it sort of like we did on the last one. We could think about the home and family, someone having this dream of a family, and then Jupiter moves into the fifth house in Aries, and there's the reality of the children that have to be faced. It's again, that fifth house is where we give love. So this is, you know, really taking action on giving love after building this dreamy compassion toward family.
Yeah, it's making me, I was also thinking too, it brought to mind, just there might have been some, with all that Pisces being activated in the fourth house, this could be a time of like there being some suffering in the family life, because Pisces can describe suffering, and that you've had to really deal with elements like, I don't know, it could be forgiveness or the development of compassion, as we talk a lot about Pisces. And then when this shift happens, it's kind of like, okay, we know the truth now and we need to move on, and let's just go out and play and have fun and get into fiery energy with it, and like let's just get started. We don't need to dwell on whatever the thing is. Let's move it forwards.
I like that. And I like, really, with Jupiter moving into the fifth house, that's a wonderful place for Jupiter to be moving. The fifth house, it's, I talk about it a lot as the place where we give love. But like you said, it's where we go to play. It's where we have fun. It's where amusement happens. So this really is opening up a great expansion in playfulness, which is an area where you've probably been doing some healing work for some years.
Exactly. And I'm looking at the time of year too. It's May. It's like it's time to go outside, and at least the northern hemisphere, and just enjoy the hot sun, and just really just embracing that.
Yeah. I think we're about a week and a half from fiddleheads.
All right. I've been keeping my eye out. The leaps are certainly going here. So,
oh my goodness, everything is just opening up. And I've been going down every couple of days and checking on the fiddleheads. I think about a week or so, week and a half. I'm obsessed with fiddleheads. Okay. Capricorn rising. And I'm going to let you take this from the beginning too, because it's good for me to listen and then fill in.
I was like, oh, what am I going to say? No. Well, so the third house to the fourth house is an interesting thing to think about. I mean, the third house is really, it's your immediate environment. Now, when you're a baby, your immediate environment might contain siblings. So we also see siblings being designated here. But this is also just how you move about your daily environment. So with Pisces there, it's kind of like you've been bringing this more, I don't know, transcendent piece to the mundane, the day to day, like how do I get to work and how do I, catch the bus and how do I go to the grocery store and there's a big line or, how are you be navigating that space with all the Pisces there. And now it's you're taking action more in the family life. So this is down in the most private part of the chart. So this is having an act of courage in that private family space. What kind of action do you need to take after you've had all this stuff in kind of the mundane reality? What kind of action do you need to take in your family life?
Okay. I like that. And what I would add to that is I want to also bring into the third house the issue of communication. So there's been, while those planets, Jupiter and Neptune, et cetera, were moving through there, it's like really developing an understanding of compassionate conversation and then having the courage to bring that compassion into the family and take action on it in some way.
Oh, that's great. I like that link that you just made with communication.
Yeah. I mean, that third house, it's our day-to-day, like you say, the mundane activities of going to the grocery store, going to the post office, whatnot, and communication and siblings. So something in that realm has that you've been steeping in has really prepared you to take an action on the area of home and family. Yeah, this could be many things. This could be, it's time to buy a new house. It's time to sell a new house. Boy, be careful. The real estate market's insane. You need a lot of courage if you're going near it. I have to say. But that would be the pathway for Capricorn rising.
Yeah, okay. Well, you triggered something for me too, Lori, just to go, one other comment I wanted to make before we move on was just that how you kind of, that idea of developing empathy and compassion with these mundane people in your life, the person at the cash register, and like you said, the person delivering the mail, or whoever it might be. I mean, it's really important how we choose to navigate our immediate environment that way. It's really important because, everybody's dealing with our world has a lot going on and everybody's dealing with it. So the degree to which you're able to speak to people you don't know very well, these acquaintances, with that type of compassion, it kind of lends you to, and remember to take action in your home life, which is sometimes the harder place because those are your familiars, and there's often a lot of struggle with our family members. It's just normal. So really it's like, how does that kind of day-to-day stuff inform your ability to be the courageous warrior in your home life?
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, let's move on to Aquarius rising. What do we got going on here?
Well, let's see. With Aquarius rising, we have your Aries is in that communication house. So this is the place where you need to step up and say the thing you need to say, right? And you've had all that time with Pisces in the second house to cultivate a better relationship with your self-esteem, knowing how to value yourself. This is the skill of developing self-love, which is the hardest spiritual path. So you've had that time with Pisces there to really kind of work on that. Like, how do you care for yourself? How do you fully appreciate your self-worth as you move about the world and your resources? And then with Jupiter moving into the third house, now you can speak about it. Now you have this platform of, really in good with yourself. And so you can have the courage to speak up, but it's not going to be easy. So,
And I think, yeah, everything you say is great. The only thing I want to add on, I want to put a little more emphasis on the money piece in that second house. Maybe you've been all dreamy and not facing reality about money. And, that could be one thing. Or somehow, yeah, there's some, possibly you've been developing a dream about how to make money, how to support yourself on that level of resources. The reason that self-esteem and money come in the same house is because they are so entwined. We are in our culture so attached to understanding who we are and how we value ourselves by what's in the bank account. So yeah, whatever's been developing there, compassion toward your own difficulties with finances could be part of that story that now is like, okay, the courage to talk about it, the courage to actually speak the truth about it.
Yeah. And well, Laura, you made me think that when you're talking about the money piece in there, I do think the third house could represent to some degree, like how you spend your money in the sense of like navigating your daily environment. I mean, a lot of us, it's like I need a new pair of shoes. You go online and you order a new pair of shoes, or you go to the local store and you buy the pair of shoes. Yeah. So there is a link in that way too. Like if you've done the work sufficiently around the money piece, then you're ready to take an action that is a clear-cut action about how do you need to spend that in a good way, that you're not wasting money, but you're buying what you need.
Right. And I think it's so important to realize that in the chart is that these distinctions between the signs, they blend. One does lead to the other. It always is, one leads to the other. So yes, whatever work you do in the second house is going to support the work you do in the next, and so forth. So yeah, I guess that's where we're at. Now we're going to move to Pisces Rising.
That's right.
All right. I'll take it. I'll start it. You've been, let's start with Pisces, where Jupiter has been. Jupiter and Neptune playing around in that first house, really developing a dreamy connection to yourself, really learning self-compassion, focusing on the self, the compassion for the self. And now with Jupiter moving into the second house, how am I going to take action on what I've learned about myself and bring that into my self-worth, my self-esteem, and how I spend money, how I use my resources? Because, how you use your resources are going to depend completely on what you understand about yourself. There's that connection between those two.
Nice. Yeah. I always think, anybody with Pisces rising, it means that part of the direction of your life is about that dream space, that idealistic vision, or, those kinds of designations. And that's kind of, so it's a little bit of it's not a clear cut, like, hey, we're going to go in this direction. It's a lot more movable than that. Pisces is a very changeable sign, right? It's, it's a mutable sign. So that's what you're working with. And you've really had this time to kind of really sit with that, and really sit with that part of your being that is kind of amorphous and moving and changing and changeable. But now with Aries in the second house, it's like, decisive action. Right. And exactly what you said, Lori, about just on your self-worth. Like you're taking this with your money, you're putting your down deposit down on something, or something like that, where you're kind of going, all right, I've done this, I believe in myself, and I'm doing it. We're doing it. Yeah. So this is where I'm investing my resources.
Right. And it's interesting, with Chiron being in there for a couple of years now, you've been doing some real healing work on your own understanding of your resources and your self-esteem. And this may be a time the action to be taken might be around, where is my money invested? How do I feel about that? Do I need to make a big change in that? It's expanding your understanding and being courageous enough to look at it. Am I spending my money in a way that actually fits with my beliefs? Mm-hmm. I think that's such an important issue, especially in our world today.
Yeah, so much about worth and just self-awareness and tuning in and doing some healing work on the self. I mean, there's a lot of that emphasis with this. So, yeah.
But it's time to take action, take action, take action. I think that's, you know, with Jupiter moving into Aries, big action is going to be being taken everywhere we look. We're going to see it. So have fun, everyone. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I think we've covered all the pieces. And thank you for listening and tuning next time.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Jenny. It's been great talking. Bye-bye, everyone.
All right. Bye.